We begin with a new warning to the GOP as several Republican state houses craft new distractions through law, from social issues to American rights, including voting. And tonight we have news that corporate America is banding together to fight back against laws like the one in Georgia that makes it harder to vote. As the saying goes, money talks. And the Washington Post reports more than 100 corporate leaders held a conference call this weekend to discuss, quote, halting donations to politicians who support the bills and even delaying investments in states that pass the restrictive measures. While that is great, advocates hope corporate America will go even further, issuing similar threats to states targeting the rights of LGBTQ Americans. Which brings us to Arkansas. The GOP-led legislature there defied its own governor, overriding his veto to enact a law banning gender-affirming health care for trans youth. But that veto was not a bold act of courage from the governor. Hutchinson had no problem signing bills banning trans girls from women's sports or allowing doctors to refuse treating trans people because it violates their religious beliefs. The governor explained himself this morning on Meet the Press.
The third one was not well done. It did not protect the youth. It interfered with the government getting into the lives of transgender youth as well as their parents and the decisions that doctors made. And to me, it's about compassion, but it is also about having the laws make sense and a limited role of government.
It is not just Arkansas. Republicans in more than 30 states have introduced similar bills targeting trans kids and trans teens, which presents a big question for the party that touts itself on wanting limited government. Why are they so determined to meddle in the lives of their trans constituents? New York Times opinion columnist Frank Bruni writes the GOP is, quote, inventing a problem to whip up a culture war that they're convinced will rebound to their benefit. In other words, the party has nothing else to win on. They don't have the economy, they don't have COVID relief, and they aren't fighting for better health care. So they are turning to outrage to win again. Will it work? How do Democrats fight back? Joining me now, Danica Roem, a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, and Chase Strangio, ACLU Deputy Director for Trans Justice. It is great to see you both. Danica, I want to start with the harm that these bills will cause. The Arkansas law bans trans youth from receiving puberty blockers and hormone therapy. How do these now banned treatments in a state like Arkansas actually save lives?
Well, so the thing is, legislation like this will not save lives. Legislation like this is actually going to backfire to a point where you're going to increase suicidal ideation among trans youth in the first place, because you're trying to take away, this little sliver of hope that they have. But if you look at what they're doing in Arkansas, if you look at what's going on nationwide and compare it to what's happening in Virginia, we had these fights in Virginia already. We've been through it. We're on the other side of it now. Virginia is now, and I'm proud to say this as a member of the Virginia House of Delegates, one of the nationwide leaders in LGBTQ equality, as we have passed about 24 pro-LGBTQ bills in the last 2 years since our Democratic majority took over in 2020. And in doing so, we actually passed one bill to affirm trans kids in schools to make sure that they're actually welcome, celebrated, and protected because of who they are, not despite it. And in my viewpoint, constituent service is not just optional for legislators, it is required. And equality is constituent service.
Chase, as I listened to Danica talk about the efforts that they're making in Virginia to actually protect and affirm trans kids, I'm reminded that the legislation that we're seeing across the country is dangerous on its face, but it's also dangerous because it begins to shift what is the center, if you could even call there a center, of this debate. And when you look at all of these pieces of legislation, they have very similar language. Do you get the sense that this is a coordinated attack, and where is that attack coming from?
Yeah, it is absolutely a coordinated attack. We know that these are model bills that were drafted by groups that have spent decades attacking LGBTQ people and have shifted their focus to targeting trans kids over the last 5 years. But what we're seeing right now is the most extreme, sweeping, and dangerous assault on trans lives that we've seen in the past several decades. And we are being inundated. Kids are being targeted. In Arkansas, they already took away health care for trans youth. They have 5 more bills pending to make it a felony to provide care for trans youth, to ban trans kids from sports again, to encourage teachers to misgender trans kids, to bar all trans people from restrooms in schools and government buildings. This is a truly dangerous and devastating assault, and it is not stopping with trans kids. It's not stopping with sports. It's moving on to healthcare. We have seen escalated bills in Texas and North Carolina that are having hearings in the coming weeks. We need to have a national outcry over what we're seeing.
Chase, Senate Democrats do have some power at the federal level to fight these GOP tactics in the states. Last month, a 16-year-old from Washington state became the first trans teen to testify before the Senate when she spoke in favor of the Equality Act. Take a listen.
Less than half of the states in our country provide equal protection for me under the law. What happens if I want to attend a college in a state that doesn't protect me? Right now, I could be denied medical care or be evicted for simply being transgender in many states. How is that even right?
Chase, both how would federal legislation in the form of the Equality Act protect trans Americans? And if you have this patchwork of state laws, what are sort of the complicating factors then that presents in the lives of trans people and those who love them?
I think it's really important to note first that because of the Supreme Court's decision in Bostock from this summer that trans people, LGBTQ people are protected under federal law in the context of employment, education, housing, credit, and healthcare, as well as when the government discriminates against us, because we have constitutional protections and we are going to continue to enforce those. The Equality Act is a critical piece of legislation so that we have more tools in the toolbox, so that we have expanded protections and public accommodations. So we want to see Congress act. We want to see the Biden administration act robustly to enforce the protections that we already have. But I think it's important to note that the states are already acting in violation of federal law right now. They are acting in violation of Title IX of the Civil Rights Act. They're acting in violation of the Constitution, and they don't care. What we need are a massive outcry. We will bring these cases to court, but kids are suffering in the meantime.
Right, Danica, Republicans also working to ban trans girls from women's sports, but in almost every case, lawmakers cannot point to an incident in their own region where trans participation in sports caused some kind of problem. I mean, what do these attacks against trans youth tell you about the state of the GOP, specifically about the fact that they're going after kids?
Well, what it tells you is that when you are singling out and stigmatizing the very people you're elected to serve, you are conducting the antithesis to constituent service, and that includes attacking trans kids. And if you want a model policy for can we actually work with trans kids? How can we work with trans athletes? How can we make this work just in general? Look what we do in Virginia with the Virginia High School Virginia High School League. The Virginia High School League started dealing with this in 2014, and the modern day policy has now been in place for about 6 years now. And when you actually look at, the criteria here, you don't have a competitive advantage that that trans kids are going to end up having just by competing on the correct sports team, the one that actually aligns with their gender in the first place. And here's the thing. Here's another thing, by the way. You want to do something about women's sports, you want to do something about girls' sports and to actually help these athletes, why don't you fully fund them? Why don't you actually attend their games? Why don't you actually go about and doing something proactive to help these athletes instead of scapegoating other children? This is where they've gotten to, is scapegoating other children, because why? Well, what other message are they going to try to put forward in that case? And we're hearing it. Even one of the Republican candidates here for the Virginia House delegates in Prince William County was just making transphobic remarks yesterday in an event. And if you look at this in its totality, if you really break it all down, it comes down to We are afraid that we're going to keep losing unless we find someone for our group to villainize, unless we find someone for our group to blame for our problems. What they should be doing instead is building up our infrastructure instead of tearing down each other. What they should be doing instead is looking and saying, how can I help you today? Why is it a matter of coincidence that the same people who are opposing rights for trans kids and trans adults are the same ones who refuse to expand Medicaid, for example? Is it coincidence at all that these are the same people who will often fight against teacher pay raises, who are doing so much to actually hurt other people? No, it's not coincidence. But when you look at what we've accomplished in Virginia, when you look at the leadership that we've actually put forward, where we actually care about constituent service and we are actually forward thinking on equality, you are seeing us take care of COVID, you're seeing us take care of infrastructure, you're seeing us take care of education, and yes, we are taking care of civil rights too.
Danica, Chase, thank you both so much for your time.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.